stages of the Party Poker European Open 5. 7 players have borrowed and stealed, and the object of this semi-final to duck, and not be the goose. For when only 3 remain, they will carry those chips forward to the final table, where a championship trophy and a $200,000 first prize awaits. It's a hearty lineup, including last year's runner-up and the European #1. It's somebody's party, so let's get it started. Chris Murray had his back to the wall and now has nothing to lose. The property developer from Chorley came through the turbos and is now looking to wreak revenge on Mahrenholz and the rest. Bambos Charalambos is always happy to take some flops. This high-stakes cash player has no qualms about risking his tournament life and going for the win. Don't be fooled by David Rudling. He's crazy as they come. This World Open finalist powered his way through the heat stages and is looking to throw the train off the tracks and into the rails. Hit Squad member Karl Mahrenholz won't shun his moment to shine in the sun. One of the most impressive players from the initial tournament stages, the bookmakers have him odds on to pull on through. Brit Andy Ward has lost his mouse, but this internet tournament professional has got the technical prowess and abandon, and he showed his live game is no slouch with a runner-up finish in a WSOP event and a final table at the World Open. Mr. Cool Marc Goodwin has got this format down to a T. Europe's #1 and World Open finalist, Marc's game is based on looking for high percentage situations and avoiding the rest. Last year's runner-up Craig Burgess has said this year he is ready to win. His game has come on in leaps and bounds, and no one will be shocked to see him big stack his way to the final table.
It would mean a great deal to me to make the final. It would be nice to do it back-to-back. Finishing second last time was in my own mind a great achievement. I'd absolutely love to take it one step further.
Ideally you'd have a big stack and you'd go through, but you've got to decide which one you're really aiming for. I've been in 2 semis before. I'm personally going to try and get a big stack, because I think if you take a big stack into final, when the blinds go back down again, then you're in a very strong position. And if I go out 5th or 6th in the semi gambling, so be it.
I plan to sort of bide my time at the start, and hopefully I can pick up some nice hands, and hopefully if I'm lucky enough to make it through the short-handed, then I can start applying a bit of pressure on the people who I think are trying to cling on and make it through to the final, as opposed to those people who are trying to get the chips. So I'll be trying to split the players into those 2 categories and make sure I pick the right targets.
I'm not thinking about climbing up the ladder of money, which may be a bit of an advantage to me, because these tournaments, just like most tournaments, are all top heavy, so it's only worth coming 1st, 2nd or 3rd. So even though this is a vehicle towards the final, I'm not looking at just scraping in. I'm actually trying to play to give myself big chips to go through and to win the event.
It is the semi-final. How exciting is this? Everyone, a winner in their heat or winner in the turbo, and joined by Matt Broughton. When you look at the chips on the table, you have to remember there's 7 stacks. It's 100,000 a player. Yellow chips worth 1,000, blues are 2, reds 5K apiece. With that 700,000 in play, we'll go forward to the final table in 3 stacks and join with another 700,000 from semi-final 2.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't treat it as a satellite, because how you perform here has such a big impact on your chances when you get through to that final. So everything to play for.
I know it's early. It's actually just the first hand, Matt, but average chip stack for the final table, 233,000. Is that something, a number that players should have in mind?
Raised 6,000.
Do you know, I would imagine right now everyone's just going to deal with the task in hand. You know, you can only win once you get to the final, and I think right now everyone will just concern themselves on getting through here. It's a pretty tough field. I mean, look at the lineup.
Potential for an explosion pre-flop. But Goodwin just cold calling the initial 3-bet to 6,000 from Rudling. And like we saw Rudling in his heat, you know, he is fast, he is aggressive. Marc's just chosen to call here.
Well, I guess when you know you're up against an opponent who is aggressive, you can rely on him to do the betting for you. And if you think you've got the better hand, that can be a really good way to work out. Obviously now Rudling's got the momentum, having been
You know,
the
I had
raiser.
the benefit of actually seeing the cards that you actually started with last time, like kings, eights, kings.
I promise you I haven't got kings this time.
All right, well, I'm just going to show you how bad I play at the moment, all right? Just to give you an understanding.
You were behind.
Yeah, king 9.
Yeah,
You're in
please.
big trouble.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
I
Was that?
remember that
Was
one
that?
as well.
Does Mark know what
I've
he's
forgotten
doing
that.
there? Because he
Yeah,
just
I'm sure
folded
yes,
the
he
winner
mentioned
and
it.
showed it.
I don't know. You know what? Mark's the number one. I'm sure he's got a plan that I just can't understand. I don't really always understand the value of showing those kind of hands, but
These guys have a lot of history, Marc Goodwin and David Rudling. They played in the Champion of Champions tournament on the GB UKPT only a few months ago. They got to the final 3. Massive pot between Rudling and Marc Goodwin. Marc with the ace-king and Rudling with the king-9. And
Pass.
I don't know why I'm telling this. Marc told this story about 8 times when he was in the box here. But I have to put you through it again.
well, I guess in this instance, Mark just not going to get himself into any stupid trouble. He's not going to, first hand in,
Raise
start
to
taking chunks out of his
4,000
own
total.
stack
I
without
was going to say
five
that
minutes.
before it got round.
Gonna
Or
pick
if I
his
might
opponents,
put somebody
no
else
doubt,
off,
too.
make it a bit.
Burgess was a guy, Greg, last year
Cool.
when he made the semifinals, he was very steady. He was very slow. He was very inexperienced. Here, he's out of the traps, man.
Yeah, and it makes a world of difference. You're comfortable in the environment, comfortable in the setting. You've got confidence in your own abilities. Then you can just focus on the game rather than all the distractions. So, hopefully everyone here is just going to give us their A game.
Now, Burgess has
4,000.
called this from the big blind. Mahrenholz
Pass.
raised from the cutoff and then knuckled the flop.
Yeah, you kind of almost get the feeling these chips are just being spent buying some information right now, just to find out where are you going to make moves and from what position and where can I take pots away from you. I mean, all these guys are just so savvy. There's just going to be a bit of posturing early doors just to try and settle down. The table draw is so important. And now they'll find out how it's going to reflect on them for the rest of the match.
Slightly different, obviously. 7-handed versus 6. I mean,
Raise to 6,000
How-
total. Pass.
how differently are the starting hand requirements in your mind?
Well, I think it's just that, it's the kind of the obvious fine adjustment you make. We've seen in some of the other heats with 6 players, and if there's a couple of players out, suddenly ace-9 and king-9 suited become very strong here. We've seen people folding ace-10 and just picking their spots a bit more carefully.
This is unusual. I mean, in a winner-take-all format, slow play the big pairs. This pair's not so big, and there's a lot of pressure here. I mean, Mahrenholz, wow.
Yeah, I mean, you sometimes early on you're chipped up and you're trying to set some traps. Almost in a cash game style. You're not looking to just take it down as soon as you think you're ahead. You want to set up some big
6,000.
pots, and this could work out really nicely.
Now, I mean, the subtext here, of course, is that these guys were in the same heat. Burry lost to Mahrenholz in the heat and has come back through the turbo. So if there's one game who these guys should know each other a little bit inside out, it's these two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that history can make things very exciting, but also the understanding between the players can make things much more deep.
8,000.
This is nice. This is kind of the payoff of you take the risks when you slow play a bigger hand, but now you might find you've extracted more in that pot than you would have done had you played it differently.
I mean, Burry Bear, watch out. This is a really
Raise
weird
to
line that
24,000.
Mahrenholz has taken here. The smooth call pre-flop, check call, and now lead out on the turn, and Burry has got no idea.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is perfect. I mean, the bad news for Karl is that his opponent doesn't have any part of it. It'd be great if that jack had made a big difference to your opponent, and now you can chew your face over it and get yet more out of him. If Burry convinces himself he's ahead here.
Well, he's bluffing here, Burry. He's raised this to 24,000.
Absolutely. It's
I mean,
perfect.
do you think Karl is he going to lean towards sort of being a little bit worried and calling down, or I mean, is he going to re-raise all in?
Well, I guess, Karl's going to go, what do I make the most money out of here? If I call this, will he push again come the river? If I push back, will he give me any more chips with still a card to come? As you say, this is where the fact that Karl does know a fair bit about Burry's game from their previous matchup.
I mean, Matt, queens on by the turn, not the nuts. If Mahrenholz pushes here, I mean, he can't get called by a hand that does, you know, I mean, what can he get called by?
Card for you, was it?
No, absolutely.
Jack? An ace jack?
Do you know, maybe I give Karl too much credit. I think he knows exactly where he is, and this is just some good acting. You know, what's he trying to look like? He had a big pocket pair that's now not so keen on the jack. I think he's going to just call this and
Call.
see if he can get another bet out of Chris. I think he's comfortable. I think there are a few cards that can come down that can ruin Karl's little gig here. Trying to look at, he's trying a bit too hard to look disinterested to me.
Wow, that's a great card for Burry in that he can actually check the river with some showdown value.
Yeah.
But he may feel like if Karl's got a jack, he has to bluff him. He's right now just wishing he could, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wishing he could go away.
Okay, let's see,
Just
guys.
show first.
Nice. 10.
Mahrenholz says, you show first. You made the last raise. He's fair to want to find out what's going on there. But he, once it went check, he knew the queens were good.
Yeah. I think he knew the queens were good right the way down. I think he was just trying to work out what's the best way to get Chris to come at him with more chips. But he's not going to complain about that pot.
I'm sure that Neil's going to have something to say about that. Stakes go up in the semifinals, and one guy who will be there, our resident analyst Neil Channing. Neil, unusual to slow play a big pair in this format. Mahrenholz did.
Yeah, I'm watching that. I'm relieved that I'm in the second semi-final. I don't want to come up across players as good as Karl Mahrenholz. I think he's a world-class player, and I think he played that hand brilliantly. I love his line there. He chose not to make a big pot pre-flop, to sell weakness, and I think he's absolutely right. The blinds are 1,000, 2,000. If you manage to get 100,000 in pre-flop with a pair of queens, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah, but then, now that you've done that, you're out of position, you have to hold your nerve, and he did.
Yeah, that's the secret. He's now accepting that he's going to play a big pot with this pair of queens, obviously if an ace or king doesn't come, and he's much more likely to get paid from someone bluffing or somebody hitting a pair below a pair of queens because he didn't re-raise pre-flop.
How strong is Karl Mahrenholz? Well, he's got Channing funking for the bad beat.
Is that right?
Even with
You
this check.
don't see queens played that way in this format too often.
No, but I think that's an acceptance. You play that way, you can run the risk of them falling. But if you run into an aggressive opponent,
Can I bet Liam Flood instead?
Very careful.
He knows
Pass.
all of him.
And that was,
Raised
I guess, the
6,000
first pot of consequence, really, in this heat.
yeah.
This
Well,
semi-final.
I think that sets the tone that
Nice.
now there are people that are prepared to
It is
start
an AS
being a bit
because
creative. I mean,
if
it'd be
you ask
interesting
him
to
to
know
show
what
this
that does to
kind of
everyone's
Well, I
take
didn't
on
ask him to.
Karl.
I just asked who was to show
I
first.
don't know.
The first time Rudling
If you show
raised,
quiz,
Goodwin
obviously
smooth calls
he's
with the
gonna
ace
try to
king.
send away and you don't see what's
This
there.
the second
21,000
time
total. Raise
Rudling's
15.
raised and Marc's found the ace king, and now the re-raise.
Can you pass me one of these over?
And he showed the ace king last time.
Well, we wondered what was Marc's motivation to show it, and maybe that's it, because now Rudling is meant to put more into this than, or thought into this than he would otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, with the history between these guys, Marc is, I think, sort of hoping to almost induce a shove. Rudling, he did look like he was, about to have one of those gray mist moments, and then got away from it. Mahrenholz ahead, based on just that one pot.
Yep, one hand won, but there was a big hand, and it's enough to start seeing him take a bit of a lead off the top.
Burry's lost 40,000 off his stack. Does he have to just sit there and settle himself down?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it was a fair punt. He just run into Karl playing those queens, in a different sort of fashion. But no, I mean, right now at this level with those chips is more than enough play.
Could it be the next European Open champions at this table? At least a 50% chance of that.
Oh, definitely enough people here with the talent to take this all the way through this and walk away with a trophy.
It's a great semi-final lineup through and through. This and number 2.
Right.
Raise to 5,000 total.
Yeah, it's no small accident that players of this caliber have got through to the semi-final. It's
Call.
these guys really understand the format and they know what they need to do to take it all the way.
Quite a tough field all the way. Bury here, out of position, but with a dominating hand. And I think our first casualty. I mean, this is big trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for him
Check.
not to take a big dent here. I mean, it you know, the hearts on the board give you vague
7,000.
concern if you've got the 2 pair, but we know that's not going to slow down Marc. He's just going to try and make some dosh out of this.
I mean, such a drawy board that Bury really has to fast play his hand to protect it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the way he'll see it, is that
Call.
I'm surprised that he's played the passive. I mean, this could be
Right.
what saves him. But,
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that he hasn't made more an effort. For all we know, he might think that he's trapping and he's taking the risk of the heart, but he thinks he can get a lot of money out of a player like Marc.
26,000 in there. Now,
Check.
Charlie Bury has
Check.
only got 58,000 back.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
There are safe cards and then there are really safe cards. Oh, this is so tough. This is so tough for Chris Bury to get away from.
Oh
it.
yeah. But why
5,000.
did Goodwin check that turn?
Maybe because he felt this was the only way to get more money.
Pot control as well, perhaps a straight card came, or
Yeah, perhaps.
there's no pot control now.
No. Now it's about how much can I extract out of my opponent. What do I put him on and what do I think he'll pay me off?
Right.
Raise. 16,000.
Now, Chris has had some really tough decisions so far. He's going to have to sit back and think about this. I hope he takes his time here. What should he be thinking now?
Well, the problem he's got is that his hand's improved. You know, is maybe it makes it easier for him to get away from, but maybe, you know, it's one of those cards that maybe it makes it easier for him to get away from, but maybe it actually makes it even harder. What does he do here? He's not got much of a stack behind him.
I mean, is it only a raise of 11,000? If it's only a raise of 11,000, he's getting like 4.5 to 1 here.
But there's a reason for that. You know, that's the thing, isn't it? It's very easy when you go, this is so tempting, but Marc must know that. This isn't a bet that's going to get rid of me if I got any piece of this. It's the whole back and forth of he knows, I know. Yeah, you can't really give him a hard time for that.
No, you can't. And in fact, the fact that he's still in this is pretty amazing. He could have played that in such a way, Chris Bury, as to be broke right now.
True, but then again, you know, you don't know. Had he played it a bit harder early on and got the reply from Marc, would that then have actually shut down Chris? So I think it's, you know, there's an argument for either way. You think he might have learnt something a bit earlier on had he played it more aggressively. Would that have cost him more or less? We won't know. But that's a pretty big dent.
There's no break in this race. 3 going through to that final table. See you on the other side. Welcome back to the semi-final. Most of the way through the first level, and Goodwin and Karl on top of the situation. Just looking at Bury there, he looks like one of those guys who, you know, they sign up for the rodeo and then they say, you know, you're riding old Bertha, and you go, oh no, old Bertha. What did I do to get her? You know.
Yeah, but then again, this is what you do. You know, this is why you get involved in the game at your level for this. This is, you know, what a dream come true to sit with these guys.
Oh, so for you, it's like, oh, old Bertha, yeah.
Cool.
Bring it on.
Bring her on.
And why not tie one of my hands behind my back while you're there? Let's make a game of this.
Andy Ward has cold Bambos' raise out of the small blind.
Check.
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 And is Bambos thinking, I ain't touching that guy with a 10-foot pole?
No, I'm sure that if Andy doesn't fire out here, which he's obviously going to, I was going to say if Andy didn't fire out here, then there's an opportunity for Bambos to make that move himself. But you know, sometimes you know the standard line, and it's just who gets there first. And position meant Andy had the opportunity, and he's not going to let any opportunities pass by.
No, he's not, is he?
If I'd have called the first bit, I'd have been keeping you.
You'd have had a keepy honest hand.
He is. That should be his poker nickname, the 10-foot pole. That's the only thing you should mess with him. The time you should mess with him.
It's funny how the closer to the nuts you get, the more honest you feel.
Talking about squirrels or people?
Both, I think. Both find the nuts every now and then.
I think if I was Marc Goodwin, I'd just pull the flop off every time.
Yeah.
Pass.
Peel a flop off, that's all.
Yeah.
Especially
An eventful first level in that everyone has kind of set their stall out. I think
Pass.
when we look at those bet frequency flops, we're going to see that Mahrenholz and Andy Ward are the two tightest players at the table.
Yeah.
And that could be a game plan of theirs. Try and get a table image for later.
Maybe
Raise
so,
to
or it could be
6,000
something as simple as
total.
they've just not found the cards and the positions. You know, there are some players that feel they want to get an early chip stack or an early image, and others are just quite happy to let the world tick over until they feel it's time to make a move.
Craig, surely you can just let this one go. Craig.
I mean, I love these
Craig!
situations
I
because
do too.
you know, you think this is born of history
Right.
and opinion and
25,000.
position, and you know that's why the game is what it is.
I mean, and what he's actually doing is, I think, is he's trying to send a message early. The first time Marc does it, rather than later, and now he knows that Marc's actually got something.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
I mean, it's a meaty re-raise. It's not mucking around. I mean, Goodwin is the ace-king man right now. He seems to have had this 3 or 4 times and done pretty well every single time. Don't think the 6 deuce is going to get too carried away there.
Yeah, and I mean, pretty clear here, Matt. There's only room for one rose-tinted shirt at this table.
You can see the number of hands that Marc's won is very slowly moving away from the pack.
Yeah, I mean, a little bang-bang got him to 172,000. I don't think he's actually turned over 2 cards yet, river-wise.
No, obviously that big hand against Craig Burgess boosted his stack, but his image right now is good.
And second and third, just trying to graft at this stage. Look, Mahrenholz and Ward, both very, very tight image.
Yep, you called it, but sometimes it's timing and the chip stack shows that they really made the right decision so far.
How straight is that here?
Burgess on the button for the 2,000 and 4,000 level. Burry has got just about 10 big
Pass.
blinds, which is 7-handed. Shouldn't be too much of a panic.
No, but he'll be aware that before you know it,
Raise
the hard thing for
10,000
him is
total.
getting involved in
Pass.
hands that he can't see through.
Pass.
Well, and then there are queens.
And let's see, there's a total of 10, so Burry can make this, and he will.
Yeah,
Raise all in.
and it doesn't have to be a monster, which is good for
Pass.
him, because Andy Ward can put Chris on a very wide range of hands that he'd make that move with.
Right, and I mean, it's going to be 25. It's basically 2 to 1. Andy might not be
25
thrilled
more.
about it, but he can't really fold
Wanna
it, can he?
call?
I would agree. I think, yeah, as you say, he's probably not that happy to make the call, but he can't get away from that.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, that's
fair dues, I think.
fair dues.
I mean, Chris could be doing that with so many hands.
Burry all in, but look at this, 74,000. This will put him right back in amongst the feathers. Oh boy.
It's an open pack.
Not to be. This is about when you start checking if the house has got any insurance. A 9, actually. An extra out besides the queen. Oh, the back door full house.
Yeah, it's a slim hope, but it is a hope nonetheless. Oh, for a second, I thought that had
crossbars.
fallen.
No problem.
Lucky Chris.
Unlucky for Chris there. He didn't really do too much wrong. There was one big hand that I don't think many players would have got away from, but it did the damage.
No, he's had a good tournament. This is his first tournament ever on television. And I'll tell you what, this guy's got some game.
Yeah, well, he's got through some pretty impressive players to be here on this table, so hats off to him.
Well, obviously, one player out, and you always look at the top 3, don't you, Matt? Because obviously 3 players going through. Goodwin, Ward, and Mahrenholz all over par, which was exactly. What would be the average chip stack now? It's 700 divided by 6. God only knows what.
All about the maths.
Pass.
Right.
I think
Right.
you know, and Aikenhead was a little bit the same. These sort of these hit squad guys, I think they've come up with this sort of this plan. I mean, Nick Brousseau was talking about it as well. That there's so much benefit to developing a tight table image in the early stages for later on, that you know, tight is right, and it's going to let you pick up a lot of chips later on. I think. I'm not sure.
No, I think the majority of these games we watch, we always end up coming to much the same conclusion. That seems to be the far more long-run successful way, because otherwise if you are going to gamble, you're relying on the luck of hitting and the luck of running to someone who hits to pay you off but doesn't beat you, and there's just a lot more variance in that style.
An interesting check. I mean, I'm just starting to get the idea that Goodwin is always leaning towards pot control.
Yeah, I think you're right. You called it a bit earlier on. I wasn't sure if he was just trying to set up some play, but I think you're right. He's got a nice little lead. He's not going to get too crazy until he has an absolute lock on a hand. But this is certainly all going his way right now.
And I mean, when you do that, you're given free cards. You're making tricky decisions all the time. From Bambos's point of view, the ace is good, but he's checked it.
Yeah, I mean the 8 kind of vaguely makes the kicker less important, but it's not fantastic for Bamberson.
I mean,
another nice little pot from Marc there, just playing it very gently, very quietly, ticking over, but moving ahead of the field now, over 200,000 in chips.
I mean, I know Burgess, Bambos, and Rudling have oodles of confidence, but they must be thinking to themselves right now. You know, you look there and you say, well, between Mahrenholz, Ward, and Goodwin, one of them is going to have to get sorted out for me to get.
Yeah, it's like having sort of 3 fences of barbed wire to climb through, isn't it? You know, one would be pretty tough, but when you've got the 3 guys sitting there in a row, you just think, I'm going to trip my trousers on one of these.
He looks like he's on cruise control, Marc, doesn't he?
Re-raise all in.
My God. And this is that re-raise, like that's, you know, a shutdown raise, not even trying to encourage action.
No, I mean, we saw, Karl earlier on played the queens much slower against Chris and tried to maximize the pot, and Marc just has no interest in that here. He just wants to keep accumulating chips, keep himself top of the leaderboard, and just very slowly march off into the distance.
Bambos' slight problem here is that his stack may not be big enough to pass. 38K into 70.
Yeah, agreed. It's
pretty marginal.
But he could be in so much trouble. Marc has yet to show himself as being very cavalier, but of course Marc hasn't showed very much of any of his hands. I just don't know. This is a very tricky one.
I mean, I think that most people would say the maths of it with ace-10 right now, it's a pass, because you're so likely to be dominated here.
You're just so likely, I think, to either be dominated or to have one live card. I just don't think Bambos is likely to go for that kind of a gamble.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I know he likes to gamble, but I think there are times to gamble with a smile on your face, and there are times to gamble with your eyes closed and your face screwed up, and that isn't a good spot.
The race to the final table continues when we come back. Welcome back to the semi-final stage of the European Open 5. I'm in the box with Matt Broughton.
That's how good Roberto's running in that.
He's so funny to watch, Andy Ward, because you always feel like his game is the most one that has the 2 extremes, looks tight, plays wild, or tight,
I'll keep myself honest.
Raise 12,000 total.
3 times the big
Their
blind.
family make the best fish and chips in the world in Swansea.
It's only fish and chip shop whose speciality isn't fish and chips. It's lasagnas and
the best fish and chips in the
I
world.
love advertising for Roberto.
His mum makes
How
the best
can
cake.
Burgess get away from this? It just feels like an all-in.
Raise all in.
And
Pass.
I'm going to sigh and call.
Call.
yeah, he's not going to sigh when he sees Burgess's hand.
Yeah.
Just a kind of a cold deck situation.
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously Mahrenholz is not going to slow play that. He's going to come in for a raise. And Burgess can't call it. He can't make a raise. But it's all or nothing, and there's no way he's going to fold a hand like the suited ace.
It's the nicest two cards Burgess has looked at tonight, aren't they? Just about, and he's been a bit dry situation-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all over yet. The flop can do things to a man. That's not really much to scream about.
It's the queen or spades, or Craig Burgess is walking.
I think they can split for a straight, but that's a bit of a long shot to dream about.
Or the double paired board, perhaps. Oh! That has hurt Karl.
Yeah.
He's going to take a big gulp. Got to come a king. And it hasn't.
Wow.
Runner-up last year, and I'll tell you what, ran from worst to first there.
Yeah, absolutely. From second from the bottom to second from the top on the leaderboard. That's one of those stinkers.
Well, I mean, the blinds are going to hit 3 and 6,000 right now, and surely it is Rudling's switch to flip, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we know that Bambos and Karl are going to get into desperate straits, but I think David will want to try and play his way out of this chip count rather than be forced to push his way out.
And 6,000, 3,000, 6,000 blinds already out.
Plus.
3 players who could just openly go all in with their stack, and it wouldn't be considered an overbet.
Yeah, it's bad timing for Karl that big hit came right on the turn of the blinds, but maybe that disguises, you know, when he's actually got a big hand. It just, how is he going to play? Is he going to try and play this through, or just
15?
Raise to 15,000 total.
Yeah.
He's going to try and play it through.
He didn't want to limp because Andy Ward could be a kind of a tough.
What you got behind, Karl?
Like 52 total.
I mean, see, for me, I think the raise is better here because, again, it's a bit like the other situation where if you go all in and someone calls, they are going to definitely see your 5. Whereas if you can find a player that will just call you, you see the flop. If the flop's good to you, then you can still push them off.
Right. He was between limping or folding there. He wanted to get action from a hand like this, and he did it. So you got to say he did it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is what he wants.
If the ace-6 beats the jacks, Mahrenholz will just say, well, not my day. But 108,000 there. Chance for Karl to get right back in it. Yeah, I don't think it's his day.
Yeah, it's cruel. I mean, it's horrible when you see someone that plays so well and then literally in the space of 2 hands is just reaching for his hat and coat.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. It's been 2 hands.
Yeah.
The ace-king against the ace-queen, the 2 jacks against the ace-6. Mahrenholz doesn't have to run it through a computer to know that he's been a bit unlucky here. And classy, he's taking it classy, and he's out.
Well, I think best stand's lost every single showdown, isn't it?
Well, we know what to do then.
Karl Mahrenholz will take $9,000 for 6th place in this semi, and just the knowledge that that's poker.
I think so. I mean, you know, it's no consolation to him right now, I'm sure, but I don't think he put a foot wrong. We saw him be creative with his queens early on, and we saw him play solid poker, lay down lots of hands, and at the end of it, 2 nasty hands, and that was sadly the way it was.
I'm frustrated more than disappointed in a way. I know the nature of the beast, and I know you know, you just have to get your hands to hold up. It's very frustrating because, you know, I thought, to be honest, I was the best player on the table. Everything was going to go smoothly for me if I could just avoid playing any big pots. Unfortunately, the cards that I was dealt, that wasn't possible, and they didn't hold up for me today.
So don't forget, they all go, oh, I had kings, but I passed queens.
So just 5 now, Matt. I mean, 5th place guaranteed $11,000. 4th gets a few thousand more, but the final table minimum payout 20 grand.
Yeah, I mean, that's an enormous lure, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure Bambos is very pleased to have accidentally got himself a couple of grand there, but I'm sure had he had the position or the cards, he couldn't have waited to get his chips in there earlier on, but that's the way it rolled.
I'll keep putting it down, they're all going to laugh at me, they're going to swear, like, you know, boil, they're going to think we're passing chips.
Just when Marc Goodwin played the semifinal in the World Open, Matt, Marty Smith was on his right during the semifinal, and Marty Smith they both had big stacks, so there was 4 left. Marty Smith went all in every hand, and Marc just kept folding massive hands to get to the final. And, I mean, it worked, but he might feel a little bit different this time round.
Yeah, and I think also this is a situation where I think Andy and Marc have similar sort of strategies, similar sort of approaches to this game. I think in that instance where you talk about Marty Smith, that was clearly his way of bludgeoning his way through the field, and Marc had a decision about how to deal with that.
Right.
Whereas I think this is a different dynamic.
Burgess having a little bit of I guess he was thinking about a squeeze, and definitely thinking the call was not going to be strong. So either re-raise, just pass.
Yeah, and I guess from Craig Burgess's point of view, it'd be lovely if Andy or Marc took a big chunk out of the other, because right now facing those two big chip leaders is a tricky way to play. You'd rather have one massive chip leader and then some more even chip stacks.
Never slow down, do you?
And this is just perfect. And look, he's found the bit of the wall he likes. Nice bit of masonry in the distance.
Massive flop for Goodwin here. Ward on the continuation bet. And I mean, I guess Marc's best case scenario is that Andy has the king. So if that's true, is the check raise the way to get the money?
I think so, because if he's right and he does have the king, then maybe Andy will move against it to stop the clubs coming into play. Obviously, we can see that right now Andy doesn't have that. So it's hard to know how best to maximize it. As we always say, to take the call is the riskier way because you open the door to being outdrawn, but you're just praying that your opponent makes a move against you.
Check.
Yeah, I mean, Ward there decides to turn off the faucet, and I mean, that's he was only getting himself in trouble there. You know, he's put a lot of money in this pot, but still on track to be at the final table, and I guess the spidey sense finally tingled.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't
42,000.
I don't think it matters what Marc bets here. There's no way that Andy's having any more interest in this. It was a fair punt.
Right. Just doesn't make sense into the metagame. And Marc sent a really strong message there, especially even by just calling before the flop, that you better slow down, Andy. I'm not going to let you have everything.
And I get a funny feeling the way Marc is right now is even if he hadn't tripped up with his sixes, I think he still would have just played that through the way he played it to a degree.
I think you're right.
It's a pretty stunning lead now, and it really hurts Andy. Going to make life easier for Craig right now.
I mean, Ward's doesn't look like it by looking at his stack, but he's got 175,000, which is
Pass.
like it's plenty, absolutely
Pass.
plenty.
Pass.
Absolutely.
Raise to 20,000 total.
Craig saying, "I'll put you all in," and Bambos cannot pass this.
No. This, I mean, he's made a lot of passes.
I'm all in.
He's dropped a lot of cards that could have been the ones to move with, but this is certainly the moment.
You can pass.
Six more.
Save you
I'm
6.
obliged to call Bambos.
Oh, you got
Just a king.
Just
a bad king.
a bad king. Oh, that's good.
What's that?
If it's a
Bambos
bad
is
king,
actually
it's
more
all right.
interested in the
Not
other
too far.
one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Tell you what, could there be a Bambos second life?
Wouldn't be the first time in his career, would it? I'm sure he's had a few of these hold up in his time.
Oh, I
That's
don't like it.
that's a bit
He's
stinky.
got clubs as
That
well.
is a bit sick. Look, Burgess is 56% here.
Missed and went
That's what
favourite.
the Royal
I'm
Straight
trying to
Flush draws were.
He's got the
Sit down,
Yeah.
Bambos. I've already
He's
sucked out
got the
once.
clubs as well.
He's very
Missed and went
practiced in the art of
favourite.
superstition, you can see Bambos.
Yeah. I'm surprised his jacket
Oh
isn't back
my
on yet.
Don't
Yeah,
care
he should
the
call
ball.
Bambos, can I?
That's
Bambos,
another
Bambos, go
miss.
for the
Don't
door, go
care
for the
the
door.
ball.
They'll have to call you back. That's the play.
9 of diamonds.
Got it to hold up.
He lives.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about those guys.
Sick
Touch
hole.
the
He's going to
bullet.
get maximum enjoyment out of this one.
Wow.
Yeah, obviously the 5's kind of a big favorite in that spot, but not when the flop comes down.
No, that's a hell of a flop. If you ever wanted to sweat out having the best hand, that's the way to do it. But nothing developed, and the best hand won. A new record for the table.
It's a standard continuation, it's not a bluff, is it? You can't count that as a bluff.
It's a very comfortable lead for Marc now. I mean, he's just so on top of this right now.
I know. I mean,
Who is this man? I mean, it's just so controlled.
he has been the
Pass.
epitome of Mr. Cool tonight, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Pass.
And it's great because, you know, as people become shorter stacked, he has the benefit of that cushion, that insurance that he can now start taking risks if he wants to take people out of it. safe in the knowledge he still has such a massive chip stack in front of him to take to the final table if he can go through.
Raise 12,000
Now,
more.
Rudling has limped here, and
Yeah.
I mean, it just didn't matter. Small blind, big blind, and
No, I mean
Oh,
that
he
was
must have a big
David
hand over
Rudling's
there.
plan working perfectly, apart from the bit that involved the pocket kings. Other than that, I'm sure that's exactly what he thought. If I limp against this guy, he's going to raise me with Jack 4, and then I just push in. It's just sadly it was kings.
right you are. We've already seen a pair under pair winning tonight. Who knows what the flop turn river have to bring here, Matt? But Rudling in dire straits.
Yeah, I mean he's not had much fun in the last 25, 30 hands, has he? It's just been very, very quiet. Lots of pursuits that didn't turn into anything. This gives him, you know, another 4 outs to his name.
Yeah, full 6. Better spot now than before the flop. And an even better spot now, I think.
Yeah, the jack comes in.
Jacks or the 7s as well. Improve.
Must feel like half the deck here to Rudling.
Yeah, well,
Or to Ward, anyway.
No good.
Good luck.
You played it perfectly as well, because I was going to raise you a bunch of hands.
well, they are. That Sanders just said what we said. You know, it's exactly what David wanted, apart from that the 2 cards that Andy ended up holding.
You had to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit frustrating for David, isn't it? Because he slowed down, took his foot off. I mean, it was the perfect thing to do.
Yeah, he conserved the chips he had for the right moment. That was the right moment.
I'm on my own.
And
They
it
left
wasn't
me all on my
entirely
own.
over. By the time the flop and the turn came down, he had lots of ways out of it, but we can see, sadly, none of the various outs he was praying for materialised in the end.
No, and just the way everything was. Small blind, big blind, Rudling only 10. You're just never getting out of this thing pre-flop.
No, that one is just textbook stuff.
You don't want to. Really.
No, I mean, as you say, it's exactly how he wanted it to go. It just wasn't the result he was looking for.
Plenty more European Open 5 action to come as we play down to 3 for the semis. Welcome back to the semi-final. It is the bubble of the tournament, the bubble of the semi-final. Bombazanthus is the low stack, and massive difference between going out now and making it just one step further.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Bambos has held in there and he's got some extra cash for his troubles. Of course, it wouldn't take much to get him in a good position, especially if he can get some action off Craig.
I mean, even if he were just to sit there and Burgess and Ward, or for instance, clashed and got all the money in, and Bambos creeped into the final table with like 40,000, that's the difference between winning 12.5 grand and being guaranteed 20 grand with still having a puncher's chance at 200.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a world of difference. I'm sure he won't take that lightly, and this could be a good
How's the
spot for
line?
him.
All in.
But I mean, if this gets through, and you have to imagine it is getting
About
through.
40, Amanda.
in-
46.
Wow.
King 9 for Andy. Yeah, I mean it's getting close to.
46,000.
It's not much of a calling hand, I guess. Bambos hasn't shown himself to be too reckless, but
Pass.
I think you give
Yes.
Bambos respect there. He's
46, I got a pass.
hung on for these
The
chips.
six,
I
yeah.
don't think he is going to push over the line with players behind him with total junk.
Down to 26, up to 55. He's going to know how to play his short stack.
I couldn't have called for 6.
But I wonder if there's even some more interesting dynamics with guys like Craig Burgess and Andy Ward versus Marc Goodwin, who's the big stack, if you know what I mean. Theoretically, if Craig Burgess puts money into the pot, both Andy Ward and Marc Goodwin could put so much pressure on him that he has to fold almost anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's a horrible spot for
17.
Craig.
Raise to 17,000.
It's almost an
total.
easier spot for Bambos than it is for Craig, because, as you say, he could do so many things that hurt him.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
All in.
Strategically, what percentage of hands can Burgess call with here? Can he even call with 2 10s? Can he call with 2 jacks?
Well, as you say, that the potential, the equity of the moment, considering moving forward to the final and what that means as far as your guaranteed prize
Very vicious.
and what your potential prize could be, is that it's just hard to justify doing anything if you're Craig right now.
And it only cost Craig, let's be fair, 17,000. If he didn't know it before, he knows it now. Andy Ward is a monster. This is where Andy Ward steps it up. This is where he's great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is what we said when we watched him before. In the World Open, he just proved that this is where he excels. When it's time to put pressure on people, he'll just flick his fingers, say, I'm all in, and just put pressure on everyone around him.
Well, Burgess does have the confidence, obviously, of knowing he's been here before, done it, and I feel like even though he wants to try and make some chips for the final table, it's just not going to happen right now. You know, things have to go perfect for him.
Yeah, and earlier on, you know, this is now Andy, I think, smiling in that before he was trying to limp into the, you know, Marc on the big blind, and Marc was never going to let him do that. But now they just appreciate their positions.
6,000.
And it's almost a, well, let's see the flop, and whoever happens to hit it wins it, and that's fine.
Marc's going to do a little muttering.
Yeah. I just think a different Marc in a different game, in a different situation, would try and make something like that, but he just seems to have such a smooth plan, and it's just going so well.
I mean, he's holding his head like that, but let's face it, 248,000, bang on level for the average, chips for the final table. He is fine and knows it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to take a real disaster for Marc to do anything other than go forward.
And the two guys who had 400
pass my way down to 100 to get out of that.
I know where I'd rather be.
The bubble goes on, and Burgess feeling
the one I played in, the two guys with 400 went 1 and 2.
All in.
It's 43.
No.
How much is that?
43.
43 more or 43 total?
No, 43 total, yeah.
No.
I mean,
37 more.
the downside for Marc here is doubling up Bambos. The upside is if he doesn't love this spot, you know, the four-handed spot, Andy Ward just keeps gathering.
Yeah.
Keep me honest.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Goodwin's getting close to 200,000, so there is a point where you can be too stuck by your strategy, and it's, you know, it's such a different scenario than the previous hand where he would have been in much the same situation.
It's a straight race. Bambos ahead, though, a little bit, and a chance for Goodwin to end it. If the King 7 wins, he's going to the final table along with Ward and Burgess.
Yep, with an extra 89,000 to go back into his stack. So yeah, it's a big key hand here.
There's a 7.
Wow.
There's the 7.
I mean, and interesting, this really is literally the first time that Marc has stepped away from the plan of action. It's working out well with one card still to come.
Yeah, and even the counterfeited queen would still, the king kicker would play. So it's really a case of 3 or not.
Yep. Only 2 cards left. That ain't one of them. We have our finalists.
Good luck.
Bambos Zantis, he's such a fun guy to watch play. Always a big smile on his face. But it's 12.5 grand for him.
Yeah, and you know, there were a few players back, you wouldn't have thought he was getting that much, but he's hung in there, played well, and only just missed a spot on the final table.
I feel that I played really well in my heat. I feel that I played really badly in the semi. I got lucky, ace queen against ace king in a massive pot. I can only play better in the final. Luckily, thank God I'm there.
Just looking forward to the final table. 200 and I've just got just over average, about 260. So system going well. Send more money.
Going into the final, feel great. Yeah, the blinds are going to go back. We're going to have deeper stacks and a little bit of time to manoeuvre. So I'm very happy to go in with 290.
3 are through, and it'll be steady as she goes when the second semifinal comes to town. 2 Germans will try to plow their way through as Mr. Unbeatable himself rolls the dice against a first-timer and a wild card from County Down when the Party Poker European Open 5 continues.